So hello everyone, and welcome to another conversation of the third cycle of conversations on corporeal architecture. And today I am very honored and happy to have here as guest Giulia Del Gobbo. Giulia Del Gobbo attended HFT in 2020. She graduated in product design at the Department of Architecture of the University of Ferrara, and she is now attending the School of Curatorial Studies in Venice, Italy. Her work is focused on social design and explores the connection between design, art, and social responsibilities. Her research activity focuses on the relation between space, objects, and people, and on the idea that designing relational objects that interact with the body can really change people's behavior. Giulia, great pleasure to have you here. So, please go ahead.
Okay, I need to share the screen. Do you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for inviting me, Maria. And what I want to show you and to discuss today with you, it's my project for my bachelor thesis. And Maria was my first co-supervisor, so she was very inspiring for me. And the title was Body in the World of Design, and basically it was an interactive workshop in collaboration with the Listening Center for Abusing Men, CAM, that's the name of the center, in Ferrara. And everything started, I started this project with this quote by Churchill, and it was a quote Maria once said in a conversation we had, and it was super inspiring for me. And that is the starting point and the ending point of my project. So we shape our building, and thereafter they shape us. So I prepared these slides and to show you the project, and maybe I will start with this one. That is the main abstract of the project. So I show you the context and the project design topic. So basically what I did is it was a design of the activities of these interactive objects for a one-day workshop, and it was structured in the 3 moments: balance, contact, and common creation. And it was in collaboration with the Centro Ascolto Uomini Maltrattanti, so the Center for Abusing Men, for men who committed violence, and the scientific partnership of my university and the department of my uni and the Emilia-Romagna region. So we respond to this call for proposal of the region, and we won this position. I really believe that gender equality is also achieved by and through design. And so I set up these methods like interaction design, space design, product design, of course, and neuro design, and these goals. And I went on working on this project. So basically, I wanted to prove that design and interact with design, body section and restriction can get people reflect on their behavior and raise awareness. And that working with the body in action and experience how it acts and reacts through the design of these objects and spaces, and of course to educate in gender equality and against gender violence. And then what I did was coming up with a context, with an analysis of the context and the scenario. Of course, it was from my country, from Italy. So here as it is clear that violence is a growing phenomena, and that is, of course, firstly, a cultural problem. So here it is an analysis of the context and some numbers from the situation in Italy that is even going worse. And the most situation between women and abuser in a relationship. So then I came back to the problem of violence, the main topic. And so it was very interesting at that moment to have a talk with Maria, and we came up with this problem of violence, so why it was so physical. And we analyzed some context, like streets and public transport, like situation when women find themselves in a danger situation. And so we came up figured out that it was a problem of boundaries, it was a matter of boundaries between individuals and between people. Of course, of spaces regulated by social norms that were not respected, of course, and of course by direct bodily signals. And so I analyzed this nonverbal communication and this topic of proxemics that was also really interesting to analyze, especially in those periods from 2020 going on. And so I went on doing on-site research, and at the moment I was in Ferrara, and I was lucky to have these men that is recovering, kind of, getting therapies to men who committed violence to change and to start a process of change. And so I get in touch with them, and I did an analysis of the men who were coming there. So how do they get there, and who are they, and which abuses do they do? And it was super interesting to have an interview with the president of the center, and we came up with this list of characteristics of key elements that men share, and it was interesting to focus on these elements and work on them for my project. So like judgment, extreme power, possession and control, disequilibrium, lack of self-criticism, and most important, the lack of interpersonal skills. And I worked a lot on that topic. And so once everything was kind of set up, I outlined the users and maybe the stakeholders that I was going to work with. And so it could have been like an abuser, a man who committed violence, but also women who have experienced violence. And so maybe my products and my activities had to be a time for reflection and personal interaction, and also like relational objects. Or we can also thought about sharing these objects and these products with students, and like in schools to use these objects as a tool for education. So I came back to the topic of violence, and I asked myself some questions like, how can product and space design interact with bodily extensions and restrictions, and like with people and behaviors and emotion? So what goals can design set for itself dealing with such an issue? And then I set up some method. And so how can I work with the body, having direct experience of how it can act and react through the design of projects and spaces, and what does it really mean to work with human design, human-centered design? So I outlined this method that is basically the method of the human-centered design, and I use it applied to my project. And then, of course, the restraints, so the risks I was going to take. So how can product design address such a complex issue? And of course, what I can do as a designer to talk about this topic and to face this topic. So the restraints and of course the problematics, the problems I was going to face. So I came up with the design concept, the final design concept that was of course based on the interaction, continuous interaction between body, product and space. And I came up with this idea of creating a workshop structured in 3 moments. So the first moment of the equilibrium, of the balance, and then the contact, and then last one, the common creation. And of course, I put some general info because the workshop was really done. And so the participant had to know where it was going to take place and when and so on. So this is basically the outline I used. So I studied from the main topic of gender violence that is really enormous. And then I passed to boundaries, and so nonverbal language, as we said before, and proxemics. And then, of course, to physicality and corporeity when interacting with people, and so to an interactive design. And then, of course, the final workshop that was for me the best way to put all these ideas together. So now on, I have a few slides that can show every single moment of the workshop. So this is about the main one, the first one, the one about the equilibrium, the balance. And so I set up, first of all, I designed this, this tool, this product, relational object. And here is the technical drawings, of course. And then I set up the precise instructions of the activities. So the people had to divide into groups and pick the object, and there was a small ball they had to pass on, and there were precise instructions of how to do it. And of course, every activity is based on theoretical premises, presumptions. And so I, of course, I was referring to proxemics, to working on interpersonal relationships. And here it's clear, for example, the reference to the playful paracadute. And so it's a clear reference, of course, because it's so used in the activities of relationships and coordination, listening, and movements. And of course, this was the moment where proxemics was more not so close. So the first moment was like people were a bit far from between them, and this was a mixed activity, so male and female together. The second activity was about contact, and so the proximity was even closer and begins to come into focus. And I worked on interpersonal relationships, again, into neurodesign and about mirror neurons. So the neuroscience that has proved that our brain is able to adapt through neuroplasticity and to emulate the feelings of the others. And here it's a clear reference to the work of touch and contact, to the work of Lydia Clark, this therapist, this artist and therapist. So that's why I used the link to her work, because she really mixed design, art, and therapy, and is a still going on, still working method. And of course, the importance of nonverbal communication. So in these activities, the participants could have not talk, but it was just about like gestures and touching. And so this is the object I designed, and of course also a focus on the materials and how to use them. And of course, this was a mixed activity, so male and female together. And then the last one was the third moment, so the common creation. In this case, I did not design a product, but I designed an activity. So I designed these cards with a quote on it. And the participants had to be inspired by these quotes, and in couple handle this clay and create their own relational object. And so there was no final result to reach, but it was also about talking about their things and what they were experiencing. And here there's a strong reference to, for example, the work of Sotself, and he did a similar laboratory system in the 60s, and of course to the global tools movement, for example, with Ancoraggi. And there was a group, the body group, that was more into producing these tangible prototypes and working with clay and materials. And so this was an activities just for pairs of men. So it was also interesting to see how they were interacting just between men. And here I did a debriefing and a project deduction. So I gave to the participants a paper they could have written on their thoughts and their feedback about the activities, and it was very positive. And then I came up with some project deductions, and so to some objective aspects that make these products and these activities functional also in similar contexts. So the metaphorical process, of course, and the body usage. So the feedback received was that body, space, and products relationship were inseparable and was necessary to deal with them. So with these relational objects, and also the fact that people had to solve a situation, and I was proposing them activities to develop together, and so they had to talk and to discuss about things. And also to going on with this workshop, they have always more proxemics, and so they were raising awareness about their body and their body in relation with other body and with space and all. And of course, the reciprocal modeling. So as I said, when I started the conversation, bodies shape the objects, and so everyone was stretching them, crossing them, handling them, but also these objects have shaped the bodies back. So shaping behaviors and shaping emotion. And the last slide I want to show you, it's about the project communication and the future scenarios. Of course, to communicate in this workshop, I had to design posters and flyers and an explanatory brochure about the project. And so this is the graphic proposal, for example, of the front of the project flyer poster, and this is the palette I used. And also the explanatory brochure. So I gave to the participant this brochure to have an opinion from them, to have their feedback on the activities. And so they could have write down on it. And then the future scenarios, of course, the replication and distribution. Of course, my thesis and was about industrial product design. And so I had to came up with an idea that was matching all of my interests, like from design, from performing arts, and to, of course, also something that was industrial. So the main future scenario is the distribution of my products, of these relational objects, kind of therapeutic ones, in the 25 CAM centers. So there are 25 listening centers for men in Italy. So as a real products for the well-being of the individual. And then, of course, there was the possible scenario that is happening to talk with Maria and with experts in this field, and to came up with new ideas or discover new possibilities on these relational objects. And then the collaboration with centers against for violence against women. So maybe to combine centers for men with centers for women, and to make them dialogue on this topic. And then last one, the new workshop proposal. So for sure, we can be think about new proposal and new workshop and new objects, or to rethink and find new special expressions for the objects I have already designed. And that, so this was the slides, but I also designed a book for about my, maybe Maria, I can show it like super quickly and just go through it.
Yes, we have to.
Yeah. So this is basically the book I designed for my project, and could be maybe useful to see the layout I used. And so I'm sorry, it's in Italian, but it was a bit to translate. And so like the index and the layout I used, it was to divide every topic. And so like there's the introduction for the abstract, and then the research moment, and then the needs the users have, the project moment, and then the bibliography and all the sources I have to refer to. And so this is, of course, the abstract. And so designing and interacting with design, extension and restriction of the body, installation and manual creations in order to make people think about their own behaviors. So these were the basic purposes of the project. And then the research phase is it's going to start. So I did this analysis about the gender violence and the numbers that are growing up in Italy. And there's also a lot of research and a lot of text here. And here it's a focus about proxemics and the body language in the topic of violence. So how it changes and how it shapes our life and our way of being. And also about, of course, non-verbal language. And then from here I did research about body on the design scene and on the moment of performance art. So the best practices I could analyze. For example, of course, AIMS or Archizoom or Gufram, they did a lot about design and body. And also some best practices from the art world I want to integrate in the project. So for example, Alan Capro, who was one of these, and about conscious design and relational design. And another one who really inspired my work was Franz Herald Walter, and I was very inspired. I saw an exhibition when I was in Germany, and I was very inspired by his way of designing this object that is basically a relational object, and to deal with a lot of people and a lot of bodies and different spaces. And then the work of Rebecca Horn, of course, and the way these objects that are between art and design, they can relate with people. And to the, of course, the work of Marina Abramovic and how it is about relational. And then Vanessa Beecroft. And a focus also on the movement of global tools, and especially on the body laboratory they carried on. And then another last focus was on the work of Lydia Clark and on this almost therapeutic work of this artist. So it was also relational between people and between the self. So I came up with this layout that was really important for me to go on with the project. And then, of course, I talk about neuroscience and how our senses could take advantage from my products. And so I skipped to the needs of the users. So, for example, to abusers, to men who committed violence, they wanted to reflect on their behavior, or women who experience violence, they wanted to pass on this trauma. And then, for example, the center, the listening center, they can use my objects as a kit almost, and of course in the schools as a educating tool. So that's a focus on the CAM centers, on the 25 CAM centers that are in Italy. And these are some stories I collected from the men who were there. And of course, I came up with the restrictions and the risk I was going to take with these products. So like, of course, cultural risks and prosemics risks, also ergonomics one. And I came up with the method from the human-centered design and the main goals I wanted to reach. And so from there, it started the project. So the final illustration and concept divided in 3 moments. And here, a focus on who was carrying on the workshop. So it was me and some other people who were working there. There was really an equipe was working there, from psychologists, sociologists, and so on. And from there, there's a focus on every moment. So from the equilibrium, from the balancing with the theoretical perceptions, and the technical drawings with the focus on materials, of course. And I did the same process for the second one, and also for the last one. And what is interesting here in the book to see, here there are some stories that the man told me. And what is interesting to see, it's maybe the last part about bibliography. I collected a lot of sources from Maria suggestions, and so a lot of references are from sources that are not from the Italian culture, for example. So it's a very not so much talk here, like as a topic, no. So it's very interesting to also go on with this research, and so yeah, that's the cytography, and so the website I consulted, and of course the documentaries and the postcards and some video I consulted to go deeper with the research. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Giulia. Giulia, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and it has been over the past 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
Wonderful and really satisfying collaboration in this project. And I was before, when we were here in class, I was telling our students how proud I am also that you were so brave to have the initiative to address such a difficult topic like this, which shows that our work as designers is not just to do beautiful, aesthetically pleasing or functional objects, but it's also to create objects that can actually change lives in a very profound way, but also in a way which is not too invasive. So I really am amazed with the maturity and the sensitivity of the objects you produced. And I think it's really wonderful to see an example of how these ideas can be applied in practice. I would just like to ask you if after this experience, because you were also directly involved in the design of the objects, but also, of course, in the management of the workshops, and so you were directly involved with the situation. If your own perception of your own body and also of relationships in general with space in different contexts, in different environments, how did it change you? How did it affect your own perception?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, because, for example, when I was doing the workshop, it was very hard for me to interact with these men, because the first time I met them, it was the first time I did the workshop. So I did not have time before to meet them and to create a dialogue with them. So they had to know me and to do this workshop. And so, of course, in the first moment, it was difficult to interact with them. And so also my body and my perception of the space was a bit strange. But then while I was going on with the workshop, and there was also the equipe of experts that were with me, I was really helped to create a dialogue with them. And also I felt like I was more free to talk with them and to be also around them, because it was not so easy. So yeah, I think it was really a nice experience to do this workshop, and also to create. So the perception I also had before creating these objects, and so I had to think about the proxemics, and so how can I translate the proxemics into something practical and into something that people can really wear, can really touch, some objects that can really be touched and be used. So yeah, of course, it was like I was involved in first person in this project. And yeah, it was also touching for me also to see the feedbacks and to read the things, the thoughts of these people and the reaction they had to this object. So it was a very strong experiment for me. Yeah.
Yes, I believe. I also find it interesting that you mentioned this, because in some ways your own, and of course very justified, bias towards these men perhaps also changed or shifted through the experience,
Yeah, sure.
which actually gives a very hopeful and positive note that through these ideas of neuroscience, that people can actually, if they are willing to, they can learn how to adapt positive and respectful behaviors with other people and also with the environment, and even develop better relationships with themselves and with their own body. I think it's a very interesting example to see how design can also be used as, you even mentioned the healing, also with the reference to the work of Lygia Clark, how design can be used as a healing tool. But it's also really important that you had also a collaboration and support with this social center that helped you with the resources, but also that you were not alone. You had this kind of support, which was important for you also to have a safe space where you could actually work with conditions where you could develop this work in a structured way.
And I was also like in touch with some centers for listening for women, but like it was not the same because we have always this perspectives from women and never on the opposite side. And so it was also strange to know that it was a center for listening for men who commit violence, because it's not so common, at least here in Italy. I've never heard about it, so it was super a strange thing, like a super new thing to deal with, and of course super interesting because I could have this news perspective from a male vision. So yeah, that was a very new position for me also.
Yes, really interesting. Before we start making questions also with the audience and also with our students, of course, because I'm sure they would have questions and that they're also surprised because it's a very unusual project. I would like to ask you, Giulia, if you imagine that this kind of relational objects can also be used and applied for different situations. So, or this way of thinking, if you envision further possibilities, for example, now we all experienced these 2 years of the pandemic, and we are all somehow also learning to negotiate body and space in ways that overlap a lot of the topics you were talking about. So there's the issues of proxemics, how appropriate it is to get close to someone, and depending on how well I know this person. And there's also this whole issue of trust, which is difficult, and also sometimes every now and then I already had this experience of trying not to be offensive with the friendliness of another person, because I want to be careful about my own well-being and well-being of the other person. So trying to show that the distance doesn't mean it's not a hostile gesture, but it's actually an action of care. So how do you envision that you can perhaps apply this way of thinking into other contexts?
Yeah. For example, just to go on with this conversation, like with this topic, there was during the workshop like a girl who totally refused to do this workshop, and for especially like the second moment, there was the touching one, and the one where proxemics was a bit closer from the first. And she was like so kind of traumatized from the COVID experience, and so she didn't want to because of that reason. And so yeah, I also think it really changed our behavior, and also you have to think to shift it to another situation. yeah, for example, I also would be curious to see how it works in the school experience. So like we also thought about distribute these products and these objects in schools as a tool to educate students. And so maybe it's also interesting to see how younger people react to these objects, and what's the new use that it can be in the future. Or also like in mixed workshop with listening center for men, but also listening center for women. And so like to mix these two points of view, and to let these two kind of male and female interact in this with these objects. So yeah, it's totally a new field, like also especially for me. So yeah.
Yes. Well, I have to say that I find the whole idea and the concept really very inspiring. And now when you mentioned that perhaps you could take it to school situation, I was already imagining, for example, recalling my own childhood. I grew up in a kind of aggressive suburb with schools with a lot of concrete, and so the whole environment wasn't really encouraging a lot of peaceful action. So there was a lot of fighting, and there was a lot of violence around. So I was imagining what would happen if we would really bring this, for example, to see how kids and so children and also older kids, how they would deal with these objects and how they would appropriate them. Maybe we would also see some interesting interactions. And now imagining not just relational objects, but also in terms of the relationship with space. Do you imagine that perhaps you can apply these ideas also in different contexts, or also addressing different topics, not just a difficult topic, for example, like this topic of violence, but for example, other kinds of relationships? Did you get any further visions?
Yeah, actually, I have not think about it yet, because of course I just have to translate everything into another context. But yeah, I think it could be interesting, like to use them maybe as a playful tool, and to see how it reacts, or how people react to it, or as or maybe like yeah, or yeah, I think I have to try it. Like next time I'm going to meet the president of the center, and we are like working on this side, and to imagine new fields for these products. So yeah, for sure. But like now it's so, I think it's too much roots in this thing of gender violence. So yeah, I just have to like switch totally from it. Yeah.
Scoop out from the
yeah, but if you have suggestion, it's like perfect.
Go back to a larger picture.
Yeah.
Sounds great. We already have a comment or a question from Milton. Please go ahead.
So I have to say I am completely impressed and in awe with how you've taken what you've done and made it into physical form. I just want to express my appreciation for that. And also it's an illustration of how in any problem solving that involves a physical outcome, you start with program, but in this case, program is much more profound. We talk about how neuroscience affects the way we think, or affects the way we behave, but in this case, it's sociology, psychology, public health that you've integrated into one sensibility about how to approach it. So being able to transform it not just into one, but into many different physical outcomes is terrific. And they're all based on interaction. So they are healing because it's all about how people do things. In architecture, we may suspect how people use things, but in the case of what you've done, you've really brought it home. So I would say anyone who designs anything, but particularly in architecture, to take that level of depth of feeling and connection and letting yourself explore the kinds of transformations that are possible using buildings, built form. This is teaching by extremes. And you've shown something that really will apply to architecture that in many ways is less extreme, but this is really profound. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Really.
Thank you, Milton. I can only agree that I am so amazed and honored to be able to share Giulia's work. And absolutely, Milton, I also thank you for your insightful comment, because I also wanted to mention to Giulia specifically how, from the point of view of neuroplasticity, what you have done is really so remarkable, because we know from neuroscience that what we learn, not only theoretically, but actually by doing, like Milton was also saying, experientially by interaction, we learn much more profoundly. So actually, it's not just about thinking and having the wish of changing certain behaviors, but actually learning how to do it with the body directly in interaction, which makes the possibility of change much more likable and much more profound. And actually, very often the first step to change is the will to change, but to take the first step and to actually act on it, that's what makes it all meaningful. And these objects you designed really are catalysts for such change. It's really, really important to see this kind of work.
I just want to emphasize what you just used, the word you used, catalyst. We can use in so many different ways when we're thinking about design. So I just want to reinforce that word. It's terrific.
Thank you. And now I would like to give the word to our students. I will get back to the audience again, because I saw that Rulu and Margaret are also here. And I think they would also like to make some comments probably, but now I would like our students to get involved and participate. Go ahead. So we have this setup here, Giulia, that we have an owl, which is it's a kind of digital robot that makes this interaction possible, like we have here. So our students have to get close to the owl to make the questions to you. Is it possible?
I hope, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, thank you a lot for sharing your project with us. It's very inspiring. And I wanted to ask you, because I'm very curious about, I wanted to know the reactions of the men during the workshop, like how they reacted in the beginning and in the end of every exercise you proposed. How they behave.
Yeah, sure. So at first sight, like when they saw the object, at a first sight, they were so like scared, literally. And like two of them, they totally refused from the first workshop to do that, because they say that like touching a man or getting touch even with another people was too much for them and too much intimate gesture. And then they, with the second one, and it was even harder because like the proxemics was even closer. And so I thought like that the first one was the easier one to do because everyone has its own space and place to be, and they could even talk. And so it was very funny at the beginning, but then it really get harder because they had to touch and they had to, they cannot talk like in the second one, they could have just touched each other. And so a lot, like two people refused to do that. But actually at the end of the process, like they took some time to write down their thoughts and to give me a feedback on what they have experienced. And also it was strange because it was just a one-day workshop. So all these things happened in like an afternoon. So it was really a short time to process all these emotions, of course. And so like they came up with this feedback at the end of the day, and it was really touching. And like one of them told me like, thank you so much, you really make me feel alive, because he never did something like that, of course. Was something totally extraordinary. So yeah, it was very hard at the beginning to involve them. And so I tried to use this metaphorical aspect just to make it like more playful, and to like a game to play all together at the beginning. And then I just switched to something more like to something deeper. Yeah, like the touching moment. And also like even the last moment was funny. They really had fun to do these things. Also like with the clay, it's something they use when they were child, and it's not so common to work with the material as an adult, or like touch another people. We never like touch another people spontaneously, just for some reasons. And so yeah, at the beginning was very hard, but then when they had the time to realize what they went through, and to realize what they have embodied and what they have learned from this experience, it was very very nice to see the reactions and to listen to the words they said. Yeah.
And you also, if I understood correctly, the first two exercises were like mixed gender. So there were the men of the center and the women, the women side, right? And the third one was just between the men of the center, right?
Yeah.
And how the relationship changed. I mean, were they more comfortable in interact with the other men of the center in comparison with
sure. Yeah, actually they were more at ease dealing with the women. So like in the first two, it was super like almost funny to stay all together and to do this kind of play together, like especially for the first workshop. But then when it was the time of doing the second one, like the touching one, like touching between two men, it was not so easy. And so like also the movements changed. So like the position of the hands or the pressure they put on the hands. So yeah, it was very interesting to see also the difference of how they act between men and also between mixed couples. Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe I would hope that there would be another question or another comment here from our students. If you're curious, you felt inspired and you would like to say something. Yes, good. Just a moment, Giulia.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
So first of all, thank you so much. It was very inspiring and it was very interesting for me. Unfortunately, the questions I had were already like told, but I just wanted to say that the products that you designed, what I find so interesting and so special about them is we said the people working on them, it's just inseparable. We just have to have a certain number of people working on them. For example, only 2, or I think it was 5 people doing the thing with the ball. And that I found that very special because you couldn't just leave out one of these people or just add one person. It just had to be this specific number. Was that something you really plan to do exactly the way that it is? Because I could imagine if what you told us, if you could put it in another context with children, for example, it would be a nice experience to see, okay, you just have to find out there's only 2 people that can do it, or you just have to get someone here to be number 5 in the ball thing. So what role did this did this aspect play, or did it even, was it even an aspect?
Yeah, actually, like to determine the number of people who were working in the first workshop, I actually started from the amount of people there were, the amount of men, like the number of men who were in the center. So actually there were 10, and it was super easy for me to divide them in group of 2, also because of the space. And it was also another thing to take into account, because it was a super small space to deal with. And it was also another aspect, because we were all around and looking at these people who were performing the act. So also the people were like staring at the other. So also it was an aspect. So I tried to divide these 10 people into groups of 2. And then I designed these objects, of course, for 5 people, and so in turns of 2. And yeah, of course, when talking about like children's or younger people, everyone has to be trained, and also maybe the proxemics between them. Yeah, it has to totally be rethink.
Thank you so much. And just a comment. When I heard you talking, so it's a lot about this interaction between these people, and I directly thought about the architecture that this could be placed, and so it inspired me a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? I think, Andrea, I think you wanted to ask something? Or...
I have something, but I'm not addressing, but I can.
Just a moment, Giulia. We are very good on schedule today, so we can take our time.
So first of all, thank you also very much. And Katarina addressed this question a little bit, but mine is a little more specific. Why exactly did you choose not to involve the women in the third exercise? Was it because of the men, so they feel comfortable, or was it more because of the women, so that they feel more comfortable?
Yeah, actually it was because at the end of this workshop, the men ended out with artwork, kind of, with material objects. And so I wanted them to be an object just related to their experience between men. So also because not everybody has tried to deal with the women. There was just a few couples that were in touch like with the women, but not everyone has tried to do this mixed experience, because it was volunteering. So not everyone proposed to do this. So of course, like the last workshop, I decided to do it just between men, so they can carry home this object with them and remember about their experience and what I've done and what I went through, and to remember the experience they lived. But yeah, just because not all of them experienced the interaction with the women. So yeah, was volunteering. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one more question that I have here is, could you imagine that these products could be used as preventive tools, not only to help people reconcile or get over things or violence, but also to prevent violence?
Yeah, sure, of course. That's also my point. Yeah, of course. And there's also I don't know how to do that. I mean, I went to the center, but in the center, of course, there are just people who have already experienced violence. So maybe I think that it can be arranged. I don't know, like I think they could be useful to prevent, but I don't know how to apply them. Like I should set up a course and with these objects, but it would be, I mean, no man would join the course to prevent. I mean, like, or maybe like there has to be an association who does it, or I think it's hard to put these objects in this content of prevention. I think it's super interesting, but I don't know where to do it. I don't know if you want to comment.
Giulia, maybe just as a suggestion, that as you were thinking before in school settings, I think it would be, and Rulo is also saying maybe in school and elementary, I absolutely think so. That, for example, I always, maybe because I had a very difficult time with physical education in school, because I wasn't particularly gifted in this department, I always felt that like it was the perfect scenery to experience all sorts of bullying. And very often it is for many children. I think that if we would start including in physical education this kind of approaches also, which are also more sensitive and more related to how to deal with others, also in terms of empathy and in terms of effective communication. I think that would be we could have very interesting outcomes. And I completely imagine that the kind of objects you designed would have very interesting impact in such a context.
Yeah, we also thought about it because actually, like, violence is a cultural problem. So starting from schools and from like education of the others could be one of the main ideas to approach this problem, of course. Yeah.
Yes, well, I can only say not of course defending any kind of violence, but I am sure that many of these men who committed violence probably experienced violence as children at home or in school. I remember growing up in school that very often teachers would get physical to discipline children. So I think that if we start analyzing where these patterns actually start, which is often at a very young age and very often also from figures of authority, we can already very early start learning better patterns and modes of relationship. I think Margaret would like to make a comment.
Thank you.
Andrea.
Yeah. Hi, Maria.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. That was a wonderful presentation. I just had a couple of comments. I'm actually doing research myself in Barcelona on space and empathy, and how architectural experience can create experiences of empathy and sort of show different points of view through not space as a representation, but this enactive action-based view of architecture. So your work is really inspiring, and the whole time I'm just trying to imagine how this could be applied to architectural scenarios. I don't know, I think for me it's like the ones that are particularly interesting are the two experiments with I guess the one with the touching and then the one with the elastic object and the ball. And it just makes me think of people sort of entering into this, I guess what's called like structural coupling scenario, where they become part of a larger system. And I just thought it was interesting because in a way with this elastic object, it's very intimate because you're connected to other people, and in a way it's maybe more intimate than directly touching another person, but because everyone's connected to this object, it's like you can feel the vibrations and the sort of movement of the other bodies indirectly, but in a more channeled way. And also, yeah, I think it's wonderful because I think maybe a lot of violence stemming from lack of empathy comes from like lack of socialization. And here it's like these people are, I guess, put into these almost like a network situation, right? Where they're part of like a bigger thing and they're aware of, they become aware of the impact of their actions on others. So I don't know, I don't really have any questions. Those are just my observations, but I just find it really, really inspiring, your work. So
Thank you so much. Yeah. And also, like, that's the method I try to apply to every workshop, like to proceed, but in a metaphorical way. So like for example, the first workshop was about this connection, as you said, between people, and also the metaphorical thing of this ball as the relationship to hold and to maintain, and also and to work on the power in the hands that usually are the tool for violence, and also to understand that the movement of one of the group could interact and decide the movement for one other in the group. So yeah, of course, it's such a strong connection between the participants. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, and also for bringing so very insightful comments. Also, I was listening to Margaret, and I had to remember some of the topics we had in the conversation with Alberto Perez Gomez a few weeks ago when we talked about empathy, and he was also mentioning how now, because of this very strong presence we have with the digital, that it becomes easier and easier to forget that in our relations, in emails, in this kind of very disembodied kind of communication, that we're actually dealing with another human, that we're dealing with another person. So, and I think it's also something that we can have in mind, because now we have also, because of all this confinement and all this anxiety that really grew during all this COVID time. And we also talked a little bit about social media and how social media has this can have this effect of escalating some kind of negative and very emotional communications, where it becomes easy to forget that we're actually dealing with other humans that will be impacted by these actions. So I think it would be really interesting to think, Giulia, how maybe also, as picking up a thread we had from before, how these objects could also be interesting as mediating tools to learn how to deal and navigate with the world again and negotiate with each other, because we have been having a very strong prevalence of these disembodied communications already for such a long time, and there has been so many escalations. And as you also mentioned from your research, that you saw that we would imagine that violence would be declining, but it's actually growing. So it shows also the importance to analyze certain patterns, and also what tools we might have already at our disposal to try to counter effect this this tendency. Rulu has also a question or a comment. Please go ahead. We can't hear you yet.
Hi, can you hear me? I was wondering about the time frame and also this thing that Maria was talking about in the pandemic, because I'm really curious about the impact you think it had about that, like the proxemic of the persons or the people, if it was on previous of the pandemic or during the pandemic, or like in which time frame was it, and if you notice any like difficult relations towards the proxemic of the persons in space.
Yeah, I did it like last November, like September, November. So it was after, of course, the pandemics, and of course it affected the behavior of that people. But yeah, not so much. Also because like we were wearing all the like facial mask or all these things. So they were kind of feel safe in this environment. But yeah, of course, like at least for the things they had to touch or for the workshop where they have to be in contact with someone else, it was really sometimes, yeah, struggling with that.
Yeah, I asked that because here in Mexico, at least, there's a lot of people that won't hug you yet because they are afraid of contact, and we are a society that loves hugging and kissing and like really close interaction with people. So it has really affected also the way we use like spaces and we interact with people. So in your experiments, it's really interesting to also think about that reconnection between people and spaces, and like the way you made them touch each other. For example, for me, it would be a stressful situation on top of all the social things you encountered also with the pandemic, like having this close encounter with some people that you don't really know. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Rulo. From our students, I don't know if there's any more comments or questions. No? Okay. So maybe we stop for now. I would always think about something more to ask to Giulia, but I also don't want to overextend our session. I would just like again to say thank you, Giulia, so much for sharing your work with us. It's really a great pride and joy that I can hear your contribution in the class, and I think it's so inspiring for our students to learn from your ideas and your experience, and also in the channel for the colleagues who also continue to watch the conversations. I think that this is really very meaningful contribution.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we're finished for now. So thank you all for your questions and your contributions, and thank you also to Margaret and Rulo and Milton. He's not here anymore. And see you next week. Bye-bye.
Ciao, thank you.